I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-Minute Convos, where I help you create a brand of your own unique real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Roifield Brown. How are you going on this wonderful, beautiful night?
You know what? I am doing well. It is 5:30 in the Bay Area, San Francisco.
Sweet.
The light is just turning that lovely golden color just as it starts to set. I'm doing good.
Love it. You know, imagery in audio is so beautiful when you can capture it, right? I can see it. I feel relaxed. I feel awesome. Well, Roifield, please do tell me, which of your talents is responsible for us meeting?
You know what? That's a very good question. I think I have a bit of a short attention span, which belies the fact that I've been podcasting now for some 5 years. I do a multiplicity of podcasts. There's a thing called How Jamaica Conquered the World was my first, looking at the spread and the influence of Jamaican cultural hegemony throughout the world. But currently, I do a thing called Mid-Atlantic, where I look at US and UK politics. I do a thing called Dum De Dum, which is a fan show about the Archers, which is a soap opera that I love on British radio. I do an interview show called Friday 15, and I edit a thing called Soggy Bottom. So it goes on and on and on. It could be any one of those shows, which some I host, some I just edit, some I just produce. The reason why we're talking.
Yeah, you are amazing. What about 10 American presidents? What about that one?
Oh, yeah, you know
There's
what?
that too.
There's always something which I forget. So I fell in love some 20 odd years ago now with the idealism of American politics. I don't agree with it wholeheartedly by any stretch of the imagination. But as I say to people all the time, if you are from England, you're just English. If you are German, if you're born in Germany, you're just German. If you're from Trinidad, you're just Trinidadian. You don't have to sign up to any socio-economical credo to be a citizen for most countries in the world. But if you are American, you sign up to believing in the Constitution. You sign up to believing in a certain set of economic and political values, which isn't the case if I'm Brazilian. If I'm Brazilian, I'm just Brazilian. If I'm Brazilian, I can be a communist, I can be a fascist, I can be an idiot, I can be smart. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But to be communist is to be anti-American if you are American, you know. So, and I say to people all the time, America is a weird place. Not that it's weird bad, but it's weird in that to be American, you need to believe in the Constitution. No, you couldn't ask anybody in the UK, the country of my birth, to recite any bits of our Constitution because we don't actually have one. We're famously the country which doesn't have a Constitution. We just have a set of precedents as to the way that the country is actually governed. You know, so arguably, if you are French, you sign up to certain secular norms because the way that France became a country was through overthrowing its monarchy, a modern country through overthrowing its monarchy. But I've been fascinated by this American experiment. And the more I look at, I research 10 American presidents, the show that I do, or Mid-Atlantic, which looks at modern day American politics, I'm fascinated in equal measure and sometimes appalled, but fascinated by the hope and the aspiration, by the peculiarities that is American politics.
Yeah, I definitely got that. I got to listen to that 10 presidents, right? And it was fascinating, like the information. I wonder how many people know about the first voters place, right? Where people get in there, vote by get in for 12, vote by 7 minutes past 12, and then they're out, right? Yeah, I said, what? No way. And then that's the first poll, right?
Yes. But, yeah. There's this very small town. I believe it's up in New Hampshire. I could be wrong, but it's somewhere up in the northeast in New England. And the municipality that runs that vote is so small. Yeah, there's less than 20 voters there, so they all get them there like 1 minute past midnight. Everybody streams in, does their vote, and then they declare their result, and it's their little thing saying that they're first place in the United States to declare their result. And I love little nuggets like that. You know, it puts a very human face on democracy, but also on a country, you know, and it makes you realize that actually this is all about people, you know, about citizens exercising their democratic rights.
So where did you learn this skill from? This skill of seeing the art for the paint?
You know, I've been thinking about this recently, and I got to give my father a lot of credit in terms of the way that my career has played out. My father was a Jamaican immigrant into the UK, and I don't think he'd mind me saying, but he would say he's an ordinary guy. You know, he was a bus driver in the city of Birmingham in the UK. But my father he always loved technology. And to this day, he has, whether it's a monitor or a TV in every room, and then he's fascinated by how his phone works, and and we were the first family that I knew that actually had a VHS recorder. And, you know, so this is going back like 1979, you know, we were like really early. So, and we had a cine camera. So what that gave me was an appreciation of how to express my creativity through technology. And he gave me the creative space to go off and do that as well. My parents never said, right, well, I'm a bus driver and your mother works for the council, you have to go and do that. They always wanted something different for me. But they always wanted me to express myself. Can you hear that dog?
That's cool. He's expressing himself. He or she. Yeah.
Well, they always said they wanted me to express myself in whatever way that I deemed fit, as long as I worked hard. That was the thing. You know, I got to work hard and be happy, but do whatever I wanted to do. And I think my love of language comes from my mother, but definitely comes from my father, is an ability to manipulate technology. And, you know, all I've ended up doing is what I used to do at the age of 7. My father used to have this big hi-fi system, as many West Indians do still to this day. But he allowed me as a little 7-year-old, 8-year-old, to record his music on cassette tape, but also to get a microphone. And I DJ'd and I made my own tapes, you know, before I was 10, way before 10. That's, here we go now, 40 years later, I'm doing exactly the same thing.
Wow. Did I say wow? It definitely fascinates me time and time again how things truly do connect in life and where wisdom lies. Because, you know, and this is not to hate on who has a psychology degree, but a psychologist would probably be able to see, right? In inverted commas, right? But to understand that your parents had that sight is pretty fascinating to me. And I think as parents, we usually do like, yeah, I think he's going to be this, or he may be this, and you're never sure, but it's just fascinating how that occurs to me and how it connects. Roifield, tell me one other thing you've done consistently over the last 3 years.
Traveled to the west coast of America. I for the last 3 years, I really spent at least half, if not half of my year actually over here. And I'm just kind of repeating myself here. That there is something deeply fascinating about this country, you know, and the complexity and the difference that there is from one coast to another. And, you know, also I think maybe a little bit more pointed would be to say that what I have done consistently in the last 3 years is actually to travel. And that sounds slightly a little bit glib and like I think that I'm better than other people. And absolutely I don't. But in the last 3 years, I've been to, let me get this right, my children live in Canada. So Canada, the United States, Mexico, Denmark, Sweden, Belgium, Portugal, Spain. I've traveled a lot, Jamaica, etc. And you discover a universal truth when you travel, that most people, most of the time, are exactly the same, whether they're black, white, brown, tall, short, Muslim, Christian, whatever. And in that way, in a time where certain politicians are saying we should build walls, I'm saying tear down those walls, because there's much more that unites us than separates us. And anybody that travels to 2 or 3 countries will come back and say the same thing. So I'm proud to call myself a globalist, and I'm proud to call myself a citizen of the world. That's not to say that I'm not proud of my Jamaican roots or my British upbringing, or the fact that I have this adopted country now, which I have, an interesting and complex relationship with. But I'm definitely a citizen of the world, and I'm definitely a globalist. And I think, and I'm incredibly proud of those things, to say that, you know what, I've traveled and I've seen bits of the world, and I've done different things, and you know what, and I kind of like people. So yeah, maybe it's travel.
I definitely get the I love people from you. I definitely get that. How does it make you feel to love people in spite of?
Well, I never understand. It really, and I suppose this 12-minute conversation is a homage to my father. But my father always told me, and I never forget this, when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I was trying to understand the world, and he said, "This is the way that I vote, son." And he voted left of centre, and he still does. And he says, you've got to understand somebody else. You can only understand somebody's point of view if you put yourself in their shoes. And as a 9-year-old, you understood that made sense. He says, before you rush to judge, before you castigate somebody for what they believe, how they worship, how they live their lives, that's not to say that some people are not above criticism, but try and put yourself in their shoes. And when you can do that, there's some universal truths which can be displayed. So that massively has impacted on the way that I see the world, and dare I say it, has made me a do-gooder, a happy-cappy liberal, somebody who wants to see the best in everybody. Don't get me wrong, not all of us are angels, not all of us do good things all the time, but ultimately that's where I kind of line up. My suspicion is if somebody does something, that they're doing it ultimately for good reasons, and their motives are pure. It's not always the case, but most of the time, most people do good.
Love it. Amazing audience. We are live here with Roifield Brown. Roifield is producer, digital strategist, podcaster, broadcaster, audio editor, and the list goes on. I cannot leave out articulate. Well, Roifield, let's switch gears for a moment now, and let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water.
Wow.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
My earliest childhood memory is, it's so banal. There is no, I'm going to say this one. My father had a friend called Trevor, and my father came over to the UK when he was approximately 16, and came over by himself to be with his father, and very quickly formed bond with a whole load of kind of recently emigrated Jamaicans, West Indians. He had this guy called Trevor, who was his friend, and we only reconnected with Trevor back when I was maybe 14. And I remember saying to him, "So, Uncle Trevor, where did you used to live?" And he said, "I lived in a place called Birchfield, which is a district of Birmingham." And I went, "You used to live in the tower blocks, didn't you, in the middle tower block?" And I remember being excited to go into the lift, and my dad used to pick me up so I could press the buttons. He said, "That's exactly it." And we hadn't seen him for like 11 years. So it was like 3 the last time I'd seen him.
Wow.
And I realized that was one of my very first memories. My dad picking me up so I could press the buttons on the lift, on the elevator for our North American cousins, so we could go up to his flat. And he was like, "How can you remember that?" And I said, I don't know. I just do. And it's one of my first ever memories. So it's nothing particularly earth-shattering or insightful, but I just remember my dad picking me up to press the buttons to go in this lift.
So why do you think this memory is so clear?
I can give you a somewhat boring and prosaic reason. I think, as a father, you realize that obviously we remember things before we formally remember. Very obviously, we know nobody remembers the first time they saw their mother or their father, but obviously there is memory there. But you realize around about the ages of 3 and 4, our memories become ordered and structured. So things don't just happen. You make sense of going somewhere as opposed to just being somewhere. And I think it's a part of that process for me, that I'm 3 and a half, and I'm starting to understand, truly traveling from place to place, going to see people. People just don't just appear. When you're a toddler, somebody just walks into your eye line. They're just there. You don't question how they got there. Yeah. And when you're 3 and a half, 4, you understand we are going to see grandma and grandpa. We're going to see this person, and the processes around that. So I think the boring answer is my brain was just becoming structured.
Well, can I offer an interpretation to the thought picture you created in my mind? I love
you are much more poetic than me, so you go.
I love the fact that your father took an opportunity to give you the process that it takes to connecting. And that process is one where you can choose the level you go to, and it is as powerful as what exists with or on your fingertips. So the fact that you were able to conceptualize in your mind that pressing this button, making that decision, will then carry us there together, and understand the legacy that you and your direction, your decision, was something that would be responsible for not just you, but the legacy, your father, your children. It was very fascinating.
You know what? All right. You must be writing poetry, because you know what? You can take something which I see as something which is fundamentally, for me, it's important, but I've never thought about it in such a way. So I thank you for uncovering a deeper truth into, for me, something which is meaningful, but which I've struggled to find meaning out of before.
You're welcome. If we fast forward to when you were 12, what was your favorite song?
12? All right. So 12 would have been about 1980. I'll tell you something, all right? I'm not going to directly answer that because I don't know. Okay. But there is something very magical. And I don't just think it's because I was coming of age. So I'm about 12 then in 1980. There's something very magical about the music of the late 70s. And I kind of say this all the time, because if you look at the charts in the UK, and I think it stands up if I say this for America as well, but I'm going to deal with the UK. You had reggae frequently getting in the charts, whether it was Althea and Donna Uptown Top Ranking, which is a little bit before 1980, but let's just for the sake of argument, it's the late 70s. You had Two Tone Ska, but a British interpretation of it. You had Gary Newman doing Cars, which is sounds so futuristic and electronic. You had Blondie doing their post-punk thing. You had the Stranglers. You had great singer-songwriter pop. There was something very magical about 1979, 1980, which bands could really plow their own furrow musically and could sound very different. I've always been in love with the sound of the Police. Love the Police, you know, with their version of white reggae. You know, I love, just geniuses to me.
Yeah.
And that period at the end of the 70s is actually a golden period for music. And I'm not one of these people that says all music nowadays isn't as good as it was back then. But there's definitely more diversity which got into the charts then.
Yeah.
That's all I would say. I'm not saying it was better. There was more diversity. Yeah. You know, if you look at the charts now, here's an argument against globalization to bring our conversation back. I went to Jamaica 1984 for the second time, stayed a month, and I remember listening to the Jamaican Top 100 chart rundown for the whole year. 90% was reggae. Nothing wrong with that. It was Jamaica. 90% was reggae. But there was, you know, Michael Jackson, Thriller or whatever. Okay. Now, if I take Jamaica out of this, it might be somewhat of a spurious example. But let's say if I went to the United States in 1984 and the top chart, it would be 50 to 60% different from the UK. There's going to be a crossover, right. But it's going to be but it's going to be different. If I went to Germany, it would be different again. This is an argument against globalization, that musically when you travel the world now, whether you're in Germany or Luxembourg or Lima in Peru, if Beyonce is number one in one country, she's number one everywhere. You know, Rihanna is everywhere. Bruno Mars is everywhere, type of thing. Yes, there is always going to be a little bit of a local flavor, and especially if that country doesn't speak English, there will be a local flavor. There will be some local artist and whatever. But that is the one regretful thing about the fact that borders are becoming less important, that musically you see less difference. But back in 1980, if I was forced to say, I would say it was more, I was in love with the music of the time.
So like, if usually when that question is asked, right, a song pops, right? Like, even without calculating age, like, a song just pops. Like, if you had to fast forward to when you were 12, what was your favorite song? What just popped?
Okay, all right then. You're pushing me. I'm gonna say "The Bed's Too Big" by the Police.
Yeah, fair enough.
But that's only because you're pushing me.
I'll take it. All right, Roifield. Well, my friend, we have arrived at our destination, but before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form, so it's yes or no. Roifield, my apologies. Roifield, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
No, but what I would say, though, I get great joy by collaborating with people.
Are you married?
No, not at the moment. No one is seen has blessed me with that institutional arrangement as yet. So,
do you have children?
I do. I have. There's 4 little human beings that call me dad. 3 that live in Canada, and then 1 that lives in London.
Boys and girls?
All of the above.
All right.
All of the above.
Do you believe in God?
Well, I'm notionally a Buddhist, and I say notionally because I don't worship with other Buddhists, so I'm bad in that regard. So no, but I believe that there is a spiritual truth and a higher truth. But if you're saying, do I believe that there is somebody with a big white long beard that sits up on high in the sky. No. But I believe that all major world religions hold large tenets of a deeper and wider truth, and how that has been interpreted for generations before was to tell stories around being selfless and being good to others. You know, when you strip away what is Judaism or Islam or Christianity or Hinduism, the tenets are all really fundamentally the same, you know, and it just beggars belief that more people don't see that. So do I believe in a God? No, but I believe in a universal truth.
What about inner circle of friends? Do you have an inner circle of friends?
Wow. You know what? Now I can see the reason why you're good at what you do. Because I appreciate that you're not asking these questions for the first time to me, that you've probably done this 1,000 times, but it forces the person at the end of the microphone to think.
And I think you may be the longest 12-minute convo, and I'm having fun with this because it's not the most boring, right? It's just
okay. You know what? I'm going to let you into a truth here.
Sure.
I don't have an inner circle of friends who are friends with each other.
Okay.
I've moved around too much. Whether it's from my hometown of Birmingham to Leeds when I went to college, to Brighton on the south coast, back to my hometown, to Manchester in the UK, to London, and now here I am in the Bay Area, California. So I have friends dotted around the world. I think like most people, you realize the older you get, the amount of truly close friends you can count on the fingers of one hand. But I always admire and envy those people that have a close circle of friends that all know each other. You know, the guys that all go to the bar on a Friday night and talk about their kids and their wives and their girlfriends or their partners, whatever. You know, that isn't me. What is me speaking to one person who's my friend from this town. And maybe they bring another friend, and then I go back home to another place, and then there's one other person that meets me in that bar. So to answer the question exactly, no.
Mm-hmm. Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
Oh God, no.
How about 3 hours a week?
Well, yes. You can't be a human being on planet Earth, you know, and not be connected to media and say you don't watch more than 3 hours. But here's the thing. If you'd have asked me that maybe a year ago, 18 months ago, I would have actually said no. But I realized that it's just because I don't switch on a television set doesn't mean that I'm not watching TV. So
let's talk about that though, like screen time. The phone under the computer, is it more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
Oh gosh, it's still less. Oh no. Okay, screen time. I sit in front of my computer literally all day long working.
Yeah.
But in terms of consuming media as opposed to creating media, which is maybe really what you're asking me, am I passive and I'm consuming? Doesn't matter how engaged I am, but fundamentally it's been thrown at me. I'm actually very good with the amount of TV that I watch. And invariably it's event television. So sport, and then we live in this golden age of great TV now. So we have, whether it's Star Trek Discovery, the new Star Trek program, or it's The Walking Dead, or it's some great HBO or Netflix, The Stranger Things. We live in a golden age for this brilliantly written television. So, but no, one thing I don't do is switch on the TV and watch NBC, CBS, or ITV or the BBC. That I don't do. But I choose and I cherry pick very selectively when and what I watch.
Roifield, after having those 1001 conversations in 3 months, I came up with a workbook that I call Yours, and it stands for Your Own Unique Real Self, and connected to that is Your Own Unique Real Statement. If you had to share with us your own unique real statement, a statement that represents Roifield Brown, what would you say that is?
You know what? Boy, oh boy, you made me think in today, and I have done quite a few interviews. All right. My unique statement isn't anything which nobody has ever heard before, but I think it's important in this time, as I said before, in a time where certain politicians are seeking to tell us how different we all are from each other, is really, do not judge anybody before putting your feet in their own shoes, in their own moccasins, because I believe that expression initially was a Native American expression. Walk around in somebody else's moccasins before you go and judge them. And that is my statement. It leads me to believe in the inherent goodness of humanity, but it also it massively configures my personal politics and my belief that we cannot build walls against our fellow man. We cannot castigate people for believing in whatever religion that they believe in. That most of the time, most of us believe the same things. Don't let the surface fool you that somebody's wearing a turban or a hijab or a yarmulke or some other religious or cultural artifact to think that that person is fundamentally different from you.
I love it. Roifield, this was a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
You know what? As I said, I've absolutely enjoyed this. And I joked earlier. I said I had an interview to do. And said, well, you're not going to prep. I said, this man just wants me to talk about me. I don't need to prep for me to talk about me. I can just turn up on spec and just talk. But you know what? You've actually given me pause for thought. And I think all of us, I think one of the things about being a human being and being a good citizen, whichever country you are, is we need to question ourselves. And you've definitely allowed me to question myself and thrown a few curveballs. And positive reinforcement is a massively overestimated quality. Actually, we learn and we grow much more when we are challenged and when we realize that we're wrong. So thank you for challenging me today.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Most definitely one of the longest 12-minute convos that I enjoyed. I definitely enjoyed this. Hey, Roifield Brown, this was a great pleasure. Again, thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition, the signs and symptoms, and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.